Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, as the case may be to everyone, and welcome to this, what I think is the fourth IFCC town hall. Our previous town hall has been very successful, and I'm sure today's will be as well. The goal of the town hall is to provide an opportunity for the IFCC executive and the other federation executive to get a chance to introduce themselves to the general membership, to give it a little overview of the activities that we're all involved in, and to give you as the membership an opportunity to raise questions and issues that you would like to see addressed. So we'll start out with some presentations from the various individuals in the IFCC and in the individual societies that these federations represent. And then we'll open it up for the latter part of this town hall to let you ask questions and hopefully address your concerns. Also interested in any suggestions that you might have as well. So with that brief introduction, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Khosrow Odeli, the president of the IFCC, to start our town hall.
Thank you very much, David. Well, I want to first welcome everyone. I know everyone is very busy, so thank you for joining us. I mean, you can stay as long or as short as possible, depending on your availability, but the town hall is meant to have a first hour for presentations, and then there will be time for a couple of hours, if we need it, perhaps shorter, for question period, Q&A, and sort of an open forum discussion. The idea is to bring people together from various regions. In this case, we wanted to have a town hall for the Americas, so North America, South America, Central America. Since we're all in the same approximate time zone, it makes sense. We had a similar town hall for Asia Pacific, but at their time zone, and then one for Europe, Africa, and Middle East for their time zone. So that has worked well. We also had one also, as David mentioned, for the corporate members. Actually, we had a town hall with our 50 corporate members, and that was very useful as well. So I think this is meant to, because of the power of the new, Zoom-like technology, we're able to do something like this, where we bring people together from various regions at minimal cost and try to have a dialogue and also address any questions and discuss any new ideas. We always looking for new ideas and suggestions on how IFCC can improve its working relationship with various federations and various national societies. So the best thing to do, I think, is to start with introductions. So perhaps I could ask our IFCC Executive Board to introduce themselves. Perhaps, David, you could start.
Sure. I'm Dave Kinneber. I'm the Secretary for the IFCC. I am located at the University of Calgary, Director for the Alberta Centre for Toxicology. I have an academic appointment with both the University of Alberta and the University of Calgary. Thanks, Khosrow. I'm very happy to be here this morning, by the way.
Thank you, David. Alexander, please.
Hello, everyone. I'm Alexander Chaliassos. I'm the treasurer of IFCC. I'm based in Athens, Greece, and I'm also the president of the Greek Society of Clinical Chemistry, Clinical Biochemistry. I'm happy to be with you today.
Thank you. And Joseph, please.
Hello, good morning. My name is Joe Passarelli, and I'm the corporate representative for the IFCC, representing the 50 or so companies of the IFCC. I am from Roche Diagnostics, and I'm not, this is my first year on the executive board, but I spent 11 years on the scientific division. So I'm very happy to be here and very happy to be part of the IFCC. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Lena. Anna, please.
Yes. Hello, good morning. My name is Ana Maria Lena. I am the regional representative of Cola-Biocli at IFCC. I am clinical biochemist, pharmaceutical chemist, and I'm very happy also to be here to be able to say some words to you today. It is the first year I am at IFCC too.
Thank you. Abdul Razak, please. You're muted, Abdul Razak. You need to turn on your audio.
Yes. I am Idili Abdelrazak from Tunisia. I am IFCB representative, and I am professor of toxicology and director of laboratory research, toxicology and environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Stephen, please.
Good morning. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Oh, Stephen.
There's two Stevens on the call. So
that's right.
My name is Stephen Hill. I am the representative from the North American Federation of Clinical Chemistry. I'm a member of the faculty at McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario, and I am very, very pleased to be with you today and to serve you on the IFCC Executive Board.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, sorry for the confusion, but now we could have our presidents introduce themselves, starting with our AACC president. Please. Abdul Razak, could you mute your line, please? Yeah, okay, great. Go ahead, please.
All right, so this time I think it's really my turn. Sorry.
Okay.
So I'm Steve Master. I'm this year's AACC president. I'm also division chief of laboratory medicine at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia and a faculty member at the University of Pennsylvania.
Thank you very much. And I wanted to also add, Mark is with us, Mark Golden from AACC. Mark, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, good morning. It's Mark Golden. I'm the CEO of AACC. I apologize for hiding behind a turned off camera, but I am working from home, recuperating from surgery. And so I thought that would be the more discreet way to participate today.
Well, thank you for making time to join us. Thank you. And we could go to our CSCC president, Allison, please.
Hi, good morning. I'm Allison Venner, and I am the CSCC president at this time. I'm based in Calgary, Alberta, and I'm a clinical biochemist with Alberta Precision Laboratories. And I'm also a clinical associate professor with the Department of Pathology and Lab Medicine at the University of Calgary.
Thank you very much, Allison. And Pamela, would you like to? Pamela is our, I believe, executive manager of CSCC. Pam?
Yes, good morning. I'm Pam Lyons, and I'm the executive director of the Canadian Society of Clinical Chemists, and I'm located in Kingston, Ontario.
Okay, great. Thank you. And so we could go to Cola-Biocli. The Alvaro, please, our Cola-Biocli president, Dr. Justiniano.
Thank you for your invitation. Good evening. My name is Alvaro Justiniano. I am the president of Cola-Biocli. I want to apologize because my English is not good. This is I am going to ask to my son to speak in the presentation. I am biochemistry, master in microbiology, and professor of immunology in my country, in Bolivia.
Thank you very much. And Ana Lena is also representing, as she mentioned, Cola-Biocli and sort of Latin American Federation. I see we have board members as well with us. I think it's great if you could introduce yourself as well. Estela? You're muted, Estela. You need to unmute. We cannot hear you.
I am Estela Raimondo. I am the national representative of Uruguay. And at this moment, I am retired of my job, my usual jobs. I am following with the external quality program in Uruguay. And I am PhD and professor of clinical biochemistry during all my active professional time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see we have also board members from CSCC. Paul and Chris, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'll go ahead while Paul's getting himself up. Hello, everybody. I've got one foot in Canada and the States here, so I'm on the CSCC Council as a council member, and I'm also on the AACC board. So I thought this seemed like a chance to see what's going on from both perspectives.
Well, you're the perfect person to be here today.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Paul, are you able to introduce yourself? Great. I think you might be muted.
I'm actually at the OSCC meeting in Kingston, Ontario, and I'd like to say hi to everyone joining the meeting, and I am the president-elect for CSCC.
Thank you, Paul. I see Eduardo and Mercedes. Would you like to introduce yourself? Might be from Colabiocli. So if not, I would like to introduce our office staff in Milan, who actually do all the work that IFCC has been doing over the years, starting with Pam. I shouldn't say Pam. I should say Paola. Paola Bramati, who is our office manager. Paola, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, hi. I'm Paola Bramati at the IFCC office, working with the executive board, the scientific division, and the international relations with the federations. I'm really glad to join this town hall that's been successful for other regions and this as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And Silvia Cardinale.
Good morning, I'm Silvia Cardinale in the IFCC office in Milan. I'm working with the Education and Management Division and with the Congresses and Conferences Committee. I'm very glad to be here today and welcome to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Silvia Colilanzi, please.
Hello, welcome to everyone to this town hall for Colabiocli and North America Federation. I'm Silvia Colilanzi. I'm working for the Communication Publication Division and for the Emerging Technologies Division within the IFCC office in Milan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Esmeralda, please.
Hello everyone, I'm Esmeralda. I'm new in the IFCC office. I'm working with the new task forces. I'm very excited to be here so I can learn more about all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think that concludes our introduction. Mercedes, are you able to introduce yourself? I see you're back live with us. Maybe she can't hear us. anyways, I think we're going to be starting with our presentations. We have several presentations. We'll try to keep it short. I'm going to give a presentation on what's happening with IFCC. Our treasurer and our secretary will also say a few words. Then we have presentations from the presidents, AACC, CSCC, and Kolabiokli presidents, and then also our federation representatives, Anna, Lena, and Stephen will give brief remarks. And then that should hopefully be all done in an hour. And then we will have time for discussion. If you have any questions, please submit them through the chat. Or if you're on the panel, then you can ask verbally. David, do you want to?
I think, Khosrow, you're going to give your presentation. Is that correct now? And then we'll move on to the other presentations.
My presentation, and then we'll go up. And I'll try to keep this to less than 20 minutes. I hope so. So this is our, as David mentioned, is our fourth town hall. We had one with the European Federation, and African and Middle East, the first one. Then the second one was with our corporate members. Third one with Asia Pacific, and this is our town hall with the Americas, North, Central, and South America. And I'm happy that we have the hundreds of people who have registered to participate. So we have, other than the panelists that you see on the screen, there are hundreds of people who have registered to listen to the presentations and be able to answer. They will be able to ask questions throughout this town hall. So IFCC has tried to sort of come up with new ideas to enhance internal and external communication across the organization and outside the organization. So this is part of it. The IFCC Town Hall idea is part of it. We're hoping to do this once a year, so hopefully we'll have one a year from now and after that. We also have this other venue called IFCC General Conference. That will be held actually next October in Brussels. And I want to welcome all of the IFCC officers to join us at that conference. That's more of an internal meeting where we bring IFCC officers from various functional groups. That means committees, task forces, working groups, divisions. They all get together to discuss the various programs and projects. This one is rather different. This town hall is to enhance communication across the organization with various federations and societies. As you know, IFCC is a very large organization. This is the map of the IFCC organization. We have 6 regional federations and 95 full member countries. So about 95 countries actually has just increased to 96, I believe. And we have 17, which actually has just increased to 19 affiliate members, about 50 corporate members, and that means that we close to 50,000 lab professionals, scientists are part of the IFCC organization or under the umbrella of IFCC organization. So this shows you the breakdown of the various federations. Our largest federation is the European Federation. We have about over 40 different countries that are part of the European Federation. The Arab Federation in the largely Middle East and Africa. We have the African Federation, and then one of the largest other federation is the Asia Pacific Federation. And we just had a town hall with them about 2-3 weeks ago. So that represents also not just Asia, but also Australia and New Zealand. We also, of course, have our North American Federation, which is AACC and CSCC, and then the Colabiocli, which is our Latin American Federation. That's about more than 24 countries that are part of the Latin American Colabiocli Federation. So today, the focus is on this region, as you know. Now, as I mentioned, we also have a very strong corporate representation. There are, actually, this number has just changed to 50 from 49. About 50 corporate members are part of the IFCC organization. They are actually formal members. They pay membership fees. So this is a formal affiliation. And this has been really important. The close relationship between both the IFCC scientific organization and the IVD industry has been really important. And it's going to be equally important as we move ahead with some of the new programs that IFCC is planning. IFCC is a worldwide non-political organization in the field of clinical chemistry and lab medicine. It is meant to establish and has been establishing, as you know, global standards in collaboration with other international organizations. Its main role is to support its membership. That means supporting those 95 plus countries, plus as well as our corporate members through scientific and educational endeavors. Also to do that, to bring people together through a series of congresses, conferences, and focused webinars and meetings. And as you know, a lot of that is happening. Despite the pandemic, we've fortunately been able to have a series of virtual events, and increasingly we're going to have more in-person physical events as well. Now, IFCC history, those who are not aware, actually, we are celebrating next year the 70th anniversary of IFCC. So IFCC was originally founded in 1952 in Paris and then renamed eventually to IFCC in 1955 in Brussels. So IFCC has a rich, long history going back 70 years. And we will be celebrating, and I hope that you will join us in the celebrations, various activities next year, particularly at our general conference in Brussels. We're going to have a special 70th year anniversary. Now, the IFCC is actually governed by the Council. The IFCC Council, the Council is actually the 95 member countries. So those member countries are actually all have representatives. They're called national representatives. So those 95 national representatives form the council, and the council actually is meeting later this month, end of November, in Munich during the EuroMedLab conference. So the council meets every few years, and ultimately many of the decisions are made by the council. IFCC Executive Board, which is people around the Zoom table here, are actually reporting to the council. The IFCC, as many of you know, has many divisions: the scientific division, education management division, communication publication division, and emerging technologies division. These all have committees and working groups, and in addition to that, the IFCC has also formed a number of task forces, and these task forces are working on a number of focused projects. And all of this, of course, is supported by the IFCC office in Milan. We also have a committee on congresses and conferences that helps with organization of various events. This is the current membership. we already introduced ourselves, so but some of the people are not here. So Anna Maria actually represents the European Federation. We also have Sunil Sethi, who represents the Asia Pacific Federation. Okasina represents the African Federation. But everyone else is here, and they have already introduced themselves. So, as you know, this board actually was elected in 2019 and 20, and began its work actually this January of 21. But as you know, this was during the pandemic. So the first thing that the IFCC has done is try to respond to the pandemic. And there are a number of activities have been, as you know, have been initiated by IFCC. One of the first things we did is we created a task force on COVID-19 back in March of 2020, when WHO announced that there is a pandemic. We actually began a task force with international experts around the world. This task force, as well as actually a number of corporate representatives, and this group has been working hard, both developing a guideline, this online resource. This online resource still is up to date. It's being updated every month. And this has actually, many of you I know are already aware, and many actually people around the world, especially in developing countries, have been using the information. The task force has also worked hard to develop practice guidelines. And I'm happy to tell you many countries, especially in the developing nations, have actually used these guidelines as they develop testing programs in support of public health in their own countries. So guidelines on biosafety in clinical labs, on molecular diagnostics, on serological testing, on biochemical and hematological testing of hospitalized patients with COVID-19, as well as more recently, we published just back in May of this year, guidelines on rapid antigen testing. As we speak, the task force is looking at possibly publishing a new guideline on vaccination and how to assess success of vaccination and immunity. And so that will be hopefully coming out in the near future. This is the information guide on COVID-19. I think many of you are aware. It actually was started in March of 2020, but it continues to be updated on a regular basis. So those who haven't seen it, I welcome you to visit and view. We try to highlight some of the latest publications, the latest evidence on many aspects, not just diagnostic testing, but on vaccination and on many other aspects of this pandemic. So these are the actually publications. So they're all published in Clinical Chemistry and Laboratory Medicine, thanks to collaboration of Professor Mario Plebani, who is the editor of CCLM. We have been able to publish a series of these guidelines in CCLM. And as I mentioned, there haven't just been a theoretical exercise. Many labs around the world have actually used these guidelines in their practice. But other than responding to pandemic, the IFCC board has developed a new vision and new strategic plan for IFCC. And I wanted to highlight some of the key programs that have begun in the last year. The vision is that we want to be more proactive on the ground as much as possible. IFCC has done a great job over the decades, but one of the perhaps challenges has been that most of the work has been internal, lots of committee meetings and guideline standardization programs and so on. But in terms of assisting with developing countries and some of the current needs in those countries, such as in quality assurance or in other areas, we have not been as active. So the idea is to try to change that and one of the aims is to directly impact patient healthcare delivery. One way is to promote the development of newborn screening programs. Many countries do not have a newborn screening program. So I know that, for example, AACC is very interested and has been active in this area. We have actually had meetings and discussions to try to find a way to work together with bodies such as AACC, CDC, and others who are also active in this area. So IFCC would like to do more, and I'll show you that we have begun a task force looking at this sort of global newborn screening. Another area is global lab quality, and the idea is to support labs, especially in developing countries, who do not have EQA, and try to assist them. And IFCC could fund some of this, perhaps in collaboration with our industry partners or corporate members. Also developing the evidence, and of course an important role is to enhance visibility of our discipline. So to develop the evidence by doing retrospective and prospective studies, looking at the impact of lab services on healthcare and healthcare delivery. And importantly, to increase e-learning opportunities and distance learning opportunities. So the first thing is the Global Newborn Screening Program. This has begun. The task force was formed. The vision being that the IFCC should be more proactive and directly impact global healthcare in developing nations, and that lack of newborn screening programs in many developing countries is leading to major health consequences and a burden on healthcare delivery and cost. So the idea is to change that. And so we actually have developed a sort of a newborn screening advocacy programs to advocate with the local governments in those countries to support and initiate newborn screening programs. And also we are in discussion. We've been meeting with WHO to develop sort of newborn screening guidelines. Actually, CDC has done a great job in this area. We actually had meetings with CDC as well. So the idea is to work together with all parties who are interested in this area. And the idea is to also have teams that can actually go to those countries and assist when travel restrictions are eased. For now, the idea is to do some virtual training. So we actually formed a task force, and I'm happy to tell you this task force began its work in January of this year. It's chaired. This is a collaboration between IFCC and the International Society for Newborn Screening. The president of the International Society is Professor Bonham from the UK, and this is so we have a joint task force headed by Professor Leon Pineda from the US and Bonham from UK, and a number of members from many parts of the world. And this program has already done a global survey to understand what's happening around the world, and actually has begun some discussion with CDC, CLSI, and AACC. And the idea is to start the first pilot in the near future. Another important program IFCC is starting is to assist with lab quality and quality lab services in developing countries who need the support. So the focus is not only just on analytical quality, but also on post-analytical quality, which is reference intervals. So the idea is to assist with internal quality assurance training, but also providing EQA materials through partnership with one of the established EQA programs. So the IFCC has approved funding for this program to actually, through a partnership with one or more companies, be able to provide support to specific countries around the world. Also, we are developing, we have just formed a task force that's looking at developing an international global database of reference intervals, both for adults and children, to assist again with post-analytical quality. Now, the EQA program has, at least the task force has started. For sake of time, maybe I'll just show you the task force membership. We have actually membership from, again, around the world. It's being co-chaired by Professor Aman from Germany and Professor Meng from the US. And we have membership from around the world. They have completed the survey. They have actually selected 10 countries to begin a pilot program. We also had a call for proposals from corporate members, and several have submitted proposals. We're trying to select one or two partners, industry partners, to actually make this happen. That's hopefully will be, final selections will be made by this year, end of this year. Excuse me, and the pilot will likely begin early next year. I mentioned the global reference interval database. We really, as you know, there is no single resource currently available for reference intervals anywhere. The data is scattered through thousands of publications and many different websites with sort of limited information. The idea is to change that and have actually a global reference database. And this database will be developed through partnership from studies around the world. And so actually a task force has been formed, is actually starting its work this month. At the first meeting is in Munich. It will take a couple of years, but the idea is to develop a database of both adult reference intervals and data from not just North America and Europe, but data from China, data from Africa, there's data from Latin America. The idea is to bring data together from all sources and create a global database and actually start comparing data from different regions. So I'm happy that Professor Zirk from Germany has agreed to chair this task force, and the task force will be meeting later this month. So this work is in progress. It will take a little time, but we're hoping that there will be an online resource for all physicians, lab professionals, students, fellows, anyone looking for reference intervals to be able to have a global resource. Okay, finally, I wanted to tell you about our e-learning programs. The IFCC would like to be a provider of free e-learning programs with a focus on developing countries, young scientists, students, and trainees. And this has been accomplished again through this program. And one of the first programs we began is the live webinar series. You probably have seen dozens of emails coming to you announcing various webinars. So this program is starting to be quite busy. We're going to try to limit it to 2 webinars a month, so it's not it doesn't take a lot of time from our members. But the good thing about these live webinar series that they've been very successful. We have a strong turnout of thousands of registrations for every webinar, and it's been a truly international series in the sense that we have not just an international audience from usually over 100 countries, but also we have an international faculty. That means we have people from all over the world participating in both presentations and in the audience. So this is going to continue to grow. The idea is to introduce e-courses as well as practical workshops, again, at no cost. I have to thank both Siemens and Boston Children's Hospital, Professor Nader Rifai, who have actually contributed funding to this program. Now, finally, we wanted to enhance the visibility of our discipline, laboratory medicine. And if task force is being formed, this is still just in development. It's not finalized. We're actually going to be appointing a chair. Some task force members have been already selected. So additional members as well as the chair will be selected shortly. So this is to begin shortly. But as part of enhancing our visibility, we are starting a global lab week. So the idea is to initiate a lab week that will be celebrated every year. I know the AACC and several organizations in the US have had this excellent program for many years. But unfortunately, this is not true with many parts of the world. Some countries in Europe, some countries in other parts of the world do celebrate, but it's sort of scattered. The idea is to have IFCC develop a program, particularly for developing countries around the world. And so we're beginning this program to celebrate the crucial role of lab medicine and lab professionals in healthcare and healthcare delivery. This is to be promoted in collaboration with all 95 national societies, 6 regional federations, and our 50 corporate members. And the official launch is actually it will be announced at the Euromed Lab conference later this month. And the program will actually begin next year. And we're hoping that this will be an annual celebration for years to come. We're actually recruiting a professional digital design and marketing company to assist IFCC to develop proper assets, appropriate assets to make this possible. Okay, that's all. I should say that IFCC has many other programs I think you're all aware of. If you do not know about them, please go to the IFCC website. Many young scientists can actually apply for scholarships. You could apply for visiting lectureship, like go to other labs and be supported by IFCC. There are many programs and of course awards for distinguished scientists in our field and many others. These programs are all described on the IFCC website. Just go to the ifcc.org and you'll get information on all of them. So finally, you know about our conferences. The conferences, the next one is, as I've mentioned, is in a few weeks' time. And there will be the next conference is actually our World Lab in Seoul in end of June. So I hope many of you are able to join us. And then our next major event is 23 Euromed Lab in Rome. So a little bit about the upcoming conference. As you know, because of the pandemic, we're all concerned about these physical meetings. But fortunately, we have had a strong on-site registration, over 2,500. We expect to have about over 3,000 people or so in attendance. And then we have also many exhibitors. And actually, they've been growing. There've been increasing interest in having exhibits at this conference. So things are starting to open up, fortunately, despite some of the concerns around increasing rates in some parts of Europe. There is still a lot of interest. Because of the high level of vaccination, the infection rates are not as important as they used to be a year ago. So therefore, I'm hoping that we will have a successful conference there. Okay, well, I just want to end there because I think I've taken a lot of time. I appreciate you listening to this presentation. We're going to go on to our Secretary and Treasurer. David, please.
Thank you, Khosrow. I don't have a lot to add to that very excellent overview of the IFCC. Just a couple of comments. First of all, I do want to say thank you to the many volunteers who indeed make up the individuals who contribute their expertise and their time to the IFCC committees, working group, and task forces. Without your contribution, we wouldn't be able to do the work that the IFCC does. Secondly, I'd like to say that while we have introduced these town halls as an opportunity for members to provide input. We do want to encourage you all to provide any comments, concerns, suggestions that you might have throughout the year. Don't wait for a town hall. We welcome your input so as we can respond to the needs of our membership. And so take advantage of your representatives, Stephen, Annalena, or any other board member or the office to provide that feedback. That would be very much appreciated. That's all I have to say. Alexander?
Yes, I would like to start a short presentation about the finances of IFCC because, you know, in order to achieve all goals and to help all our members, we need then sound financial system. So this is my report for until October 2021, from the beginning of the year when we started our term. So I would say that during the months of 2021, as IFCC Treasurer, with the help and the assistance of the IFCC office, we collected the annual dues of full affiliate and corporate members, that is our means of income, and helps the functioning of all our functioning units. And the adherence of operating units of IFCC to their budget allocation has been monitored, and this was an easy task because of the absence of physical meetings. Detailed records of all transactions have been kept. Unfortunately, reimbursements were impossible until the early May, when our bankers validated of the President of the Treasurer the access rights and sent us our credential to start reimbursing the expenses. And the financial return of IFCC investment had been monitored. And we also, during 2021, we closed all them and monitor all the transactions that happened during 2020. This is the summary of income. The budget for 2021 is 1,750,000 about Swiss francs, for all the accounting is done in Swiss francs. And for the moment, we have collected 1,009,000, but as you will see in the next graph, the actual is the brown bars, the budgeting is the blue bars. You see we are missing the Euromedlab 2021 profit that was scheduled for May, but has been rescheduled for end of November, December, but it's something that we hope to collect. And so you see that we are leaking income, but also the expenses, although for the full year has been budgeted for 2,600,000 Swiss francs. For the moment, we have consumed about 410,000 Swiss francs because we haven't still make big expenses for Euromedlab, but also travel was drastically reduced. So for the moment, until the end of September, normally we should expect a deficit for the year of 860,000 Swiss francs, but in reality, we have an excess of 601,000 Swiss francs, because also the e-meetings, the conference of IFCC helped to this. Apart this, the investments that IFCC keeps were at 3,700,000 Swiss francs in 2019. In 2020, grown to 3,800,000, and the final report shows that at the end of October we had actually 4,300,000 So this was my report. Thank you for your attention, and now I pass back the stream to David.
Thank you, Alexander, and I'll ask Joe Passarelli now to say a few words.
I don't really have much more to add to this. Maybe Khosrow had mentioned this earlier, and that is that we had a very successful town hall for the corporate members at the third week in September. I've gotten some feedback since that town hall, and I think Khosrow and to the executive board and to all, this is a venue that they want to continue to have. And I think I even mentioned this at the end that perhaps we want to do it maybe more than once a year, but we'll see. Just a little bit about the IFCC corporate members. We plan to meet in EuroMedLab in the end of November. We are going to do this as a hybrid meeting, although we're hoping that as many people can attend in person. I already do know that many people will be there physically, so this will be our first meeting in 2 years together. And I think that so far there has been, as Khosrow had mentioned, a great deal of interest in perhaps making EuroMedLab to be the opening of things in the new normal, where we try to get together. I was at the AACC meeting, I guess about a month ago, and I have to say to you, it was really a pleasure to be there. It was a little different. I mean, I don't know how others feel that when you interact with somebody with a mask, it's not exactly the same. But I think the AACC did a great job, an absolute great job. First of all, to keep everybody safe, but also to really do just as good as possible, given the conditions, for the corporate members, for the exhibitors, and really made it a pleasure. I was really happy to be there, and I want to commend the AACC group that they really pulled this off in a very good way. And I've received a lot of feedback from the other corporate members. So that's really all I have to add. I think just from the feedback, there are always issues that corporate members have, and we have been very transparent with the IFCC, but these improvements are in the works.
Thank you very much, Joe. I think we're going to move on now and have a presentation from Dr. Justiniano Alvaro, and you're muted.
COLABIOCLI, Latin American Confederation of Clinical Biochemistry, founded in 1968 in Mar del Plata, Argentina. In 1973, the Latin American Confederation of Clinical Chemistry was established officially during the Second Congress of Biochemistry in Porto Alegre, Brazil. Article number 1, the Latin American Confederation of Clinical Biochemistry is a professional, scientific, academic, and union institution, private and international, non-profit, that gathers entities integrated by university professionals who are dedicated to a clinical, biochemistry, or similar professions, created or to be created in Latin America or in other countries with a Latin language, without political, racial, religious purpose, and its affiliates will have the rights and obligations established in the statutes. The current executive committee is integrated by Dr. Álvaro Justiniano Gross, President, Dr. Luis Fernando Barcelos from Brazil, Vice President, Dr. Rosa Inés Escalier from Bolivia, Secretary, Dr. Lisandra Morales from Bolivia, First Vocal, Dr. Giovanna Boraz from Panama, Second Vocal, Dr. María Elena Redondo from Chile, Third Vocal, and Dr. Fernando Antunes from Uruguay, former president, chair vocal, and Dr. Estela Raimondo from Uruguay, former president. Here is a photo of our actual executive committee goals. And the goals, article number 3, the Confederation aims to recognize and constitute a national entity seeking its affiliation to the Confederation in each Latin American country, promote the union awareness and the spirit of solidarity, camaraderie, and loyalty among clinical biochemistry and similar professions around the world, particularly those in America Latin and other-speaking countries. Establish and promote links with associations related to knowledge of clinical biochemistry and clinical laboratory science. Collaborate with public authorities, associations, and professionals of any country in the study and solution of healthcare, health and professional and university problems. Promote and hold scientific, technical, educational, professional, legal union meetings, and specifically Latin American Clinical Biochemistry Congress of Clinical Biochemistry. Suggest to the university authorities corresponding to each affiliated country basic programs in the professional training of clinical biochemistry and their equivalents. Consequently, recommending and supporting those countries that have not yet enacted exercise law that protect professionals about issues related to any management aimed at such proposed. To act in coordination with other national and international public and private organizations and entities, ensure that Latin American national entities act within the latter jointly, so that the principles and objectives of the confederations contribute to the solution of the global problems of the profession, serving in the best way to individuals and society. Provide governments, universities, and public and private entities of Latin American countries the information they require, as well as advice and help in legislative projects, research, surveys, and any other requests of interest in the specialty. Study, propose, develop, and comply with the legislative and social policy measures aimed at achieving a process of integration of the legislation on the exercise of the activity in Latin American countries, disseminate by the means that they are considered appropriate, such as by editing periodical publications, scientific union, professional topics, and the activity of the institution. Spread the dignity, hierarchy, individually, and emancipation of the profession. Sanction the code of ethics of the professionals who exercise clinical biochemistry or equivalent professions in any of these manifestations. Encourage and promote the implementation of internal control and external evaluation of quality or aptitude tests, accreditation, and others in the countries of the affiliate entities. Vision. An organization that promotes continuous quality improvement and clinical laboratory development with strong leaderships setting agenda items with the active participation of the national members entities. Pillars of a strategic plan: strengthening the institutional image of Cola-Biocli, strengthening of Cola-Biocli members association and other professionals associations, emphasis of the participation of young professionals with the Confederation. Promote the strengthening of national standards and regulatory frameworks aimed at the recognition of quality management systems in clinical analysis laboratories in Latin America. Strengthening national structures of Cola-Biocli members countries that promote continuous quality improvement. Strengthening the role of laboratory professionals as a fundamental part of the health team. Identify agenda topics within Cola-Biocli to expand the scope of the laboratory in Latin American countries. Develop continuous training programs facilitating access for the different member countries of Cola-Biocli. strengthen relations with universities and scientific institutions. Colabiocli has different types of partners: affiliates, academics, corporate, and collaborators. Affiliates, there are 18 countries in Latin America: Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Cuba, Ecuador, El Salvador, Spain, Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico, Nicaragua, Panama, Paraguay, Dominican Republic, Uruguay, Venezuela. Collaborators: Spanish Society of Laboratory Medicine, Italian Society for Clinical Biochemistry and Clinical Molecular Biology, International Federation of Clinical Chemistry and Laboratory Medicine, EFCC. Activities and 2020 and 2021. Voy al otro, ¿no? Stop sharing. There are many activities of Colabiocli, so I'm gonna just tell the activity because there are a lot of topics. Colabiocli Executive Committee meeting, participation, presidencia de Colabiocli in 15th Aniversario AEFA, Spain, meeting of Committee of the Executive Committee of Colabiocli in Cochabamba, Bolivia, monthly meetings of the Executive Committee online, meetings to organize Congress, Mexico, 2022, approval of the Strategic Plan of Colabiocli 2022, official Colabiocli pronouncement as permanent support to biochemical professionals in pandemic times, strengthening of Colabiocli on social network, as well as launch of Colabiocli conversatories in agreement with Colombian College of Bacteriologists, quality management course and laboratories good practice, SBAC Digital, Colabiocli, Uruguayan Congress of Clinical Biochemistry, Virtual Congress of the National College of Bacteriologists of Colombia, the challenge of innovating, interview to the Colabiocli president with bioengineering magazine of Norway, virtual meeting of presidents of national entities, webinar association of chemical and biologists of Guatemala and Colabiocli, webinar conversatories modality with College of Microbiologists of Costa Rica, virtual meeting of presidents, national entities, members of Colabiocli, Colabiocli Agreement National Quality Control Program, PNSQ of the Brazilian Society of Clinical Analysis, launch of the Colabiocli Agreement National Quality Control Program of Brazilian Society, meeting of the Task Force Young Scientists, EFCC, and the Young Professional of Latin America, interviews Radio El Microscopio, activities in 2021, virtual congress, few modular courses, commemoration of academic activities, presentation of the second cycle of conversatories Colabiocli 2021, meetings of the executive committee, webinar carried out with member countries of Colabiocli, Mexico Congress meetings 2022, formation of new working groups of Colabiocli, overview of the Colabiocli, call for Colabiocli scholarships, preparation of regulations, census of laboratories in Latin America, call for by video Colabiocli contest, launch of PNCQ pilot program, submission of proposals to EFCC, course, few course and diploma scholarships endorsed by Colabiocli, and the International Congress of the CLAD Group, guarantee of Colabiocli. Working groups, academic and managing affairs, accreditation, pre-analytical, bioethics, young professionals, blood bank. This is in creation. There are a list of the few Congress. The next one is in León, Guanajuato, in Mexico, in 2022. And the conclusion is promote the implementation of regulatory standards for quality control and laboratory accreditation programs in Latin America, incorporation of national entities in agreements with universities in the definition of the training process for professionals, incorporate young professionals into the leadership space of national entities. We will be waiting for you at the 15th Latin American Congress of Clinical Biochemistry from March 30 to April 2nd in 2022 in León, Guanajuato, Mexico. Thank you very much for the invitation to Prof. Adeli and the Executive Board. Excellent initiative.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Justiano Gross. We appreciate your presentation. And I would now turn it over to the AACC President, Dr. Stephen Master.
Thanks very much. My slides going. So thanks very much for the opportunity to present. I wanted to just go over some of the things that we've been doing recently over the last 18 months or so. And of course, as is the case for all of us, COVID has been really the transformative event that's driven many of our activities. So I'm going to talk briefly about our COVID response and the recognition that we've gotten nationally for our COVID response. I'll talk also about our return to the in-person meeting. Joe already alluded to a little bit of how that had gone, but I'll give you a little bit more information about that. Talk about the strategic initiative that we undertook at that meeting, which is a COVID study looking at serology and creating a sample bank. I'll talk a little bit about other pillars of our strategic plan that really aren't covered by our response to COVID. And then finally talk just very briefly about a new focus of some of our global work, which is a pilot project that was initiated with the CDC reaching out to us. So when we initially started the pandemic, AACC sat down and asked, what should our priorities be? And we decided that we needed to, first of all, work on elucidating the science of SARS-CoV-2. We wanted to increase early testing capacity, which, as you recall, was a major issue. We wanted to provide broad resources to the lab medicine and clinical communities to respond to the demand for testing. And then we wanted to raise awareness of the need for testing and the role of the lab medicine community. So how did we do this? Well, the science of SARS-CoV-2 really, of course, was spearheaded by our journals. Clinical Chemistry in the Journal of Applied Lab Medicine published a number of articles throughout the pandemic that really ranged in topics from serology guidelines through machine learning to try and use non-PCR tests to try and determine who was at risk of SARS-CoV-2. So there are a number of things that we did from that standpoint to try and specifically address the scientific issues, and I'll talk about another one in a minute or so. We also recognized that testing capacity was a major issue. The way we addressed this was, first of all, through advocacy, trying to make sure that with the FDA and other organizations that there was a recognition of what the labs could provide through lab-developed tests and what the need was nationally. We also recognized that there were major issues that were emerging with supply chain. And this, of course, continues to today with all sorts of things that continue to be bottlenecks in our ability to provide the testing pipelines that are required. So one of the things that we did to address this was to create a survey very early on of the labs in the country that were providing SARS-CoV-2 testing and to try and disseminate that as widely as possible. That really addresses some of these other points on the page, which have to do with making sure that the broader clinical community was aware of the resources that labs in the US had to address this issue. This, I'm obviously not going to read this slide, but this just goes through September of 2020 and shows the kinds of things that we did, in addition to what I just mentioned, to try and address the leadership needs for SARS-CoV-2 testing in the U.S. What you'll see if you look at it in detail is that there are a broad number of different approaches that we took. We had public relations outreaches with Carmen Wiley, our president at the time, and David Grenache, president-elect at the time, appearing in national media discussing issues of testing and the need for testing and the resource requirements for testing. We had a number of governmental outreaches that are on here. We were able to have an AACC member serve on a committee that was advising the administration on issues of supply chain and its requirements for laboratory testing. And there are a number of other advocacy things that you'll see on this slide. Again, this only goes through September of 2020. We've had another year of the pandemic since then, but I wanted to give a flavor of the variety of things that we did to try and address this issue at a national level. This actually was recognized. It's always nice to get a little bit of external feedback. The American Society for Association Executives, that is to say the sort of association of associations of which we are also a member, gives out a certain number of awards every year, the so-called Power of A awards, which are designed to recognize associations that have made a fundamental contribution to the national life and to important issues in society. And this year, the AACC received a Power of A award in recognition of what we did in advocacy for SARS-CoV-2 and the pandemic. So we felt that this was actually a help to the lab medicine community, and that it showed in a very public way the value of organizations like AACC and, of course, IFCC and others would serve similar roles at an international level. And of course, this led us to our in-person meeting, which again, Joe alluded to earlier, which was held in September. Now, as you can imagine, there was a lot of discussion leading up to the meeting as to the way in which we could do this safely. For many of our members and many of the attendees, this was the first meeting in person that they attended since the onset of the pandemic. And therefore, we wanted to be particularly careful to make sure that there was no untoward outcome. So as a result of that, to address that, actually, we actually required proof of vaccination and a negative test immediately prior to entry to the meeting, and universal masking throughout the meeting. There was some question about whether that was all necessary. We felt that it was, that each of those addressed a very specific safety issue. And we had around 7,500 total attendees who came to the meeting with that in mind. Now, 400 exhibiting countries, companies, and some virtual participation. Now, I have to say that there were some members who, even with all these precautions, felt that they still were uncomfortable attending. And one of the things that I think was most positive about this meeting was the fact that we have no documented, that we know of, cases of COVID that resulted from the meeting. So we actually feel that this was very safe and very successful. And I think that looking forward to our next meeting in July in Chicago, this makes us even more confident. Even in a relatively high incidence area, we were able to show that you can have a safe meeting that was very positive. And I think actually we're all fairly confident that things are going to be much, much better by next July, both with increasing vaccination and with the advent of some of these small molecule antivirals that are coming on the market. I think that we're moving into that as Joe alluded to, new normal that will be very positive. The other thing I'd say is that having a meeting in person really did make a difference. I think that the thing that we noticed was that all the Zoom calls that we have really didn't address some of the in-person interactions, and particularly those unplanned interactions that really form so much of the value of some of our conferences. And I really think that it was a fairly universal reaction, people to say, I'm so glad we're back in person and seeing each other and getting to interact informally in that way that's so productive. So again, we're looking for a great international participation in Chicago, and looking forward to hopefully seeing you all there as we gather again with this one already under our belt. And the other thing we were able to do as part of an in-person meeting was to start creating a new sample bank through our COVID-19 immunity study. The idea of this study was to create a large bank with annotation of individuals indicating their vaccination status, when they were vaccinated, when they were last boosted, and then to take those take samples from those study subjects and both do antibody testing and actually send them away for some T cell activity testing using a quantiferon kind of assay. Though the antibody data will be returned to the study subjects, but this also provides a resource for the community going forward in order to be able to study not only the persistence of immunity, but also various aspects and what other health conditions are contributing to the degree of antibody response. For example, in our study population, we had a number of we had a large number of participants and AACC staff and other volunteers, consenting subjects, drawing samples, and I think that this was a tremendous success and something we only could do because we were in person. So I've talked about most of the pillars of the AACC strategic plan. We've talked about advocacy and influence and what we needed to do through the pandemic. We talked about scientific advancement through things like this immunity study. We talked about expanded AACC brand positioning, by which I really mean making laboratory medicine practitioners broadly aware of the AACC. I think the fact that AACC, although clinical chemistry is traditionally front and center in our title, the fact that we were able to be so productive in an infectious disease pandemic in a virology setting really shows that we are broadly, as IFCC is, supportive of laboratory medicine and not merely limited to clinical chemistry. That really leaves two pillars: the value of laboratory medicine and data analytics in laboratory medicine. So I want to talk just very briefly about what we're doing in those fronts, starting with data analytics and laboratory medicine. I personally think that this is one of the most exciting frontiers in our field. The fact that we have so much data that has traditionally been reported one at a time back to clinicians, but which could be aggregated to add value, to add diagnostic value, is, I think, a really exciting aspect of our field. So several years ago, Carmen Wiley appointed a committee to advise the board on what needed to be done by AACC in data analytics. And I was a member of that committee, and that committee reported to the back to the board about a year ago, and its recommendations were accepted. That's led to a number of different things. One of the things that we recognize is that in our field, it's very important that we provide education in data analytics. And now, of course, by data analytics, I don't just mean advanced machine learning algorithms, but also data analytics for operations, which is, I think, very important for broadly for our field. So we're trying to develop a very comprehensive strategy to provide that education to our members so that we in the laboratory medicine community are the ones driving that use of data analytics on our data. We're the ones who have the domain expertise, who understand, for example, the importance of harmonization in many of the things that we want to do with respect to large-scale data analysis. We're the ones who know those nuances of our data, and therefore it's important that we generate a group within our society and broadly within the laboratory medicine community that is skilled in data analytics. So we're continuing to push forward with that. The other aspect of our strategic plan really fits with what Khosrow mentioned about the IFCC strategic plan, which is the value of laboratory medicine. Regardless of the particular health system in any given locale, it's very clear that the way that we as laboratorians will be able to show the value of laboratory medicine is with rigorous studies that have quantitation with respect to financial impact and value for care. We think that this is really important. We think that, as Khosrow indicated earlier, there's a real evidence gap there. There are things that we need to do to really to provide that body of evidence. And so my predecessor, David Grenache, put together a committee that is beginning to work on this. And of course, this is building on work that IFCC has done in prior years, and we anticipate that this will be done in a very collaborative way with work that IFCC is undergoing in this area, because we think that this is important for us all globally in order to make the case for the importance of our field. The last thing I'd like to mention that AFCC is working on is just a very recent thing. I mentioned that the CDC approached us under the umbrella of our Global Lab Quality Initiative with the idea of deploying point-of-care lipid testing devices in remote regions in emerging economies. The funding is provided through the CDC Foundation with financial support from Amgen. And so far on the AACC side, the faculty that are working with us are Jim Nichols and Bill Clark. Jim, at Vanderbilt, and Bill Clark at Johns Hopkins. In conjunction with local societies, we are beginning the aspects of this study with the idea of focusing in year 1 on the Philippines in partnership with the Philippine Association, and in year 2 with Bolivia. Again, this is fairly new for us, new news, and I just wanted to bring it to this particular town hall to make you all aware of this initiative as well. I think I've exhausted my time, and so I guess we're leaving questions for the end, but thanks very much for the opportunity to share.
Thank you, Stephen. And now I'll ask Dr. Alison Venner, the CSCC president, to say a few words. Are you able? Can't hear you yet, Alison. Can see your slides though.
There we go. Sorry about that. I couldn't get off mute. Just trying to get it into full presentation. There we go. All right. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today on behalf of the CSCC. It's a pleasure to be here to share some of our current and very recent activities. So first, I'm just going to highlight our current council, who has been in place just for about a month now, and will run through till 2022. I wanted to briefly touch on a couple of our recent awardees and just to highlight our sponsors for these awards, as well as the recipients. We had our annual general meeting very recently, so we were able to properly acknowledge each of the recipients. So today I'm just here to highlight them. So you have the award for outstanding contribution to clinical chemistry, sponsored by Siemens Healthineers, and the recipient this year was Dr. Stephen Hill. We also have the CSCC Award for Education Excellence, sponsored by Beckman Coulter, and the recipient this year was Dr. Hossein Sadzadeh. We also have the CSCC Award for Research Excellence, and this is sponsored by Ortho Clinical Diagnostics, with the recipient being Dr. Manuela Newman. And this year we were delighted to have a CSCC honorary membership, and this went to Dr. Matthew McQueen. We also have the CSCC Award for Innovation in Lab Medicine, which is sponsored by Roche. And this year the recipient was the Kidney Check program, which is a really comprehensive program for screening and triage to bring preventative kidney care to rural and remote Indigenous communities across several Canadian provinces. And its focus was to use point-of-care testing to actually identify, risk stratify, and provide treatment strategies for chronic kidney disease, diabetes, and hypertension in individuals from ages 10 and up, regardless of their pre-existing factors. And it was led by an interdisciplinary team, and its innovative program has really been able to help improve healthcare in some very important parts of Canada. As well, through our CACB arm, the Award for Outstanding Service to the Profession of Clinical Biochemistry is sponsored by Siemens Healthineers, and this year's recipient was Dr. Peter Katzak. I did want to highlight a couple of meetings. So as we've just recently heard, we had the annual meeting with the AACC, and every 4 years the CSCC is able to do a joint meeting with the AACC. So we were able to have many of our SCC members participate, several of which were able to attend in person, not nearly as much as we would have liked given the pandemic, and we look forward to our future partnerships with the AACC on this. Our upcoming members can look forward to a few other meetings though. So for 2022, we are actively planning to be in Niagara Falls in June next June. So we're hoping that we'll be able to be there in person together for our first annual meeting in a couple of years for our in-person participation. And then planning ahead, we will be joined with the CCMG, our colleagues in 2023 in Winnipeg, which is trialing this again after it was put online last year. And then in 2024, we're targeting to be with our SQBC colleagues and to be in Quebec. And then in 2025, we are aiming to be back with the AACC. We've also provided an MOU with the 2020 POCT Symposium to support that meeting, which was held virtually in 2020. Given that had to be moved into a virtual environment, we are aiming to be back in Montreal next September 2022, and CSCC is going to be hopefully supporting, or will be supporting, this meeting as well, which is well underway for its planning. And so we look forward to that meeting as well. I want to highlight a few of our other activities that we're currently doing. So for our journal, our news, our archives, and some of our current activities. Firstly, I just wanted to acknowledge our clinical biochemistry journal. The editor-in-chief has been working tirelessly over the last while with her very well-supported team of 8 associate editors, and I encourage you to have a look at our latest edition if you have not already. We also have our CSCC newsletter, which is a regular publication sharing important updates and announcements for our members. We welcome the new editor-in-chief, Dr. Dorothy Trong, and if you have an interest, we have 1 vacant position with our associate editors. We also have a very active archives committee that is currently focusing on supporting provincial and national efforts to celebrate some key milestones that we are currently having, particularly across some of our provincial groups. And they're also aiming to share the history of CSCC and our members through a variety of different avenues right now, including some insightful webinars and video recordings. The council itself is also specifically looking at a few key initiatives, including looking at our current division terms of reference and handbook. We have some activity to generate a new salary survey, hopefully to be released within the next couple of weeks. And we are also spending some time, similar to some of the other groups that have spoken today, to expand on our public relations and support ways to better educate the public on clinical chemistry. We have a group that's very active in trying to get a new podcast out called The Lab Report. So please stay tuned and have a look for that. There's also work in the background to update our website, which is also quite exciting. We have a lot of activity through education working groups and special interest groups. So one of the key activities that we have with our roundtables is well underway. We've had the first couple of successful ones already, with the one last week on quality improvement, and our next one coming up on point of care testing. And so through the year, there are 16 roundtables which are planned and available for if you're interested on our website. And we've got some really great speakers, both within Canada, but also from many locations across the globe. We also recently had Dr. Roger Strasser as our 2021 traveling lectureship, which is sponsored by IRAD, and he was able to present at 3 different sessions presented to our particular provincial sections, but they were joined by many of our members across Canada, and he was able to speak on rural healthcare in post-pandemic Canada. We also have the Quality Management Working Group is back underway to provide some updates to our Leadership and Quality Management program, which is a 5-module course that can provide up to 50 credits. And so right now they're just providing some new content and hoping to keep up with the growth in this field as well. We have many working groups and special interest groups, which I've highlighted on the slide here. They range from harmonizing reference intervals to COVID-19, as well as pediatric perinatal and utilization management. And each of these groups do quite a bit of different activities throughout the year, whether that's through publishing some guidelines, compiling data, sharing cases, and troubleshooting. And on this next slide here, I've just highlighted a couple of the activities that they've participated in, including 4 one-hour webinars that the Harmonized Reference Interval Group provided to all CSCC members. The Caliper Group continues to be very active in publishing reference intervals and sharing that through peer-reviewed publications and their online database. We have the CSCC guidance document on COVID-19 point of care, and they are also able to have members contribute to the AACC guidance document on COVID-19 serology testing. We have a couple of studies for COVID-19 which are underway through the COVID-19 special interest group, and the point of care interest group was able to provide a guidance document on point of care quality assurance. We also have representation on several external professional groups, and here I've got a couple of that I'm going to highlight today, in particular with the IFCC. We have a representation on the executive board. We have many members as full member representatives, and we also have several members that are continuing as corresponding member representatives and on working group representation. We also have other representatives on different external professional organizations, and I've just included 4 here as examples, including the Canadian Standards Association, the Lab Tests Online Partner Advisory Board, the JCTLM Working Group for Traceability, Education and Promotion, and the Canadian Society of Nephrology Task Force on eGFR reporting, which is one of our most recent additions. And then just to round out what I'd like to share with you today, we want to highlight some of the trainee support that we are actively providing. So we do have 2 grants which are available. One is for a travel grant to support trainees to attend our annual meeting, as well as an elective visit grant, which may be used for an opportunity for our trainees to augment their training and visit another lab to experience something that maybe they haven't yet had an opportunity or will not get an opportunity to within their standard training. Although today we've sort of focused principally on the CSCC, I did want to acknowledge the Canadian Academy of Clinical Biochemistry, or CACB. So they're our academic body of the CSCC, and they focus on the training, certification, accreditation, and professional development. So they are able to provide specific support to our training programs, and this past year there were 6 of them that they provided that for. And then we also have an arm that I want to highlight for a meeting accreditation program. And so their focus is principally on ones that are occurring within Canada, including in 2020, 2021, our annual conference, our roundtable education series, the traveling lectureship, as well as conferences provided by our provincial section and webinars by our industry. And with that, I will end my presentation.
Thank you very much, Allison. And we'll turn now to Dr. Stephen Hill, who is the North American Federation representative to the IFCC Executive Board. Stephen.
Thank you, David. I don't have any slides. I have a very short presentation for you. So I'm Stephen Hill. I represent the North American Federation of Clinical Biochemistry to the IFCC Executive Board. And so in that role, I have 2 main functions. The first one is to ensure that the voices of the 2 societies that are represented in the NAFCC are heard and their concerns are heard at the Executive Board. And the second then is to ensure that the voice of the IFCC and their concerns are transmitted back down to the 2 societies in the North American Federation. So the North American Federation is quite a young federation. It was created only 5 or 6 years ago when it was realized that the two societies in North America did not have a direct voice into the IFCC. So the first North American Federation of Clinical Chemistry representative was Anne Gronowski from the AACC, and now I am taking that role for the next 3 years from the CSCC, and that will switch back and forth. So the North American Federation doesn't really have any activities of its own. Those activities are provided directly to the world through the activities of the American Society for Clinical Chemistry and the CSCC. And so they're doing it, both societies are doing a terrific job, and it would be foolish, I think, to then try and create another layer of bureaucracy to do that. So then my role is really as a communicator to make sure that those voices are heard both ways and that the activities are well known to people around the world. So I can introduce you to the executive board of the NAFCC. That is me. I can introduce you to the Secretariat of the North American Federation of Clinical Chemistry, and that is me as well. And so it's a pretty small operation, but I think we provide a very important role. So that is all my my comments, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. We'll turn now to Dr. Annalena, who is the Calabi-Oakley representative to the IFCC Executive Board. Anna?
Can you see my presentation? Yes. Hello. Yes. I am very glad to be here and to be able to say some words to all of you. I have already presented myself. I am clinical biochemist, pharmaceutical chemist, and I did a PhD about population disorders in diabetic patients. My director of thesis was Dr. Stella Raimondo, that is present today. I was General Secretary of the Executive Committee of Colabi-Oakley in the period 2017-2019, being the President, Dr. Stella Raimondo, and the Vice President, Dr. Álvaro Justiniano Gros, who is the current President of Colabi-Oakley. I am currently the regional representative of Colabi-Oakley at IFCC. There are many professionals from Latin America in the 4 IFCC divisions. The expectation we have is to have a lot of participation in the various IFCC divisions, committees, groups, and task forces. We can also participate through webinars. As a result of the pandemic, this modality of education has been adopted with great success worldwide. This year, we had 3 webinars proposed by Colabi-Oakley at the behest of IFCC. One of them was about quality in clinical laboratory, another about neonatal screening, and the third one about clinical and metrology laboratory. You can see the professionals that participated in those webinars. They were very recognized professionals, and the webinars had a very good level, not only of knowledge, but also there was a lot of participation all over the world. In 2022, we are proposing 2 webinars, which will be in Spanish with English translations. One of them about the importance of D-dimers in different applications, and the other about the importance of pre-analytic in the different areas of the laboratory. We already know who will be the professionals who will participate in these webinars. Proposals of webinars will be welcome to continue collaborating with the Task Force of Global E-Learning. I am the liaison between this Task Force of Global E-Learning with the IFCC Executive Board. As regional representative, my main goals are interact to maintain the links between Cola Biocli and IFCC in optimal conditions, fostering interrelation in regional and international activities, maintain contact with the board of Cola Biocli and the different Latin American countries, approach Latin American countries that are not part of IFCC in order to achieve their affiliation, report the activities of Cola Biocli to IFCC board, informing the technical, scientific, and administrative advances of Cola Biocli, participate in academic activities, encourage the training of young scientists, and invite them to participate in IFCC Young Scientists Task Force. Inform Cola Biocli countries of the activities where they can participate on behalf of their society and the region in IFCC. One way of supporting IFCC's objectives and helping Cola Biocli member countries to meet their own objectives is to promote communication between IFCC and Cola Biocli and with national representatives of the Latin American countries, full members of IFCC. This town hall is an excellent opportunity. Now I want to take this opportunity to invite everyone to the 25th Cola Biocli Congress in Mexico, which will be from March 30 to April 2 in 2022. Next, Dr. Rosa Sierra Moore will talk a few words about this Congress. Thank you, Professor Adeli, for inviting me to say these words, and thanks to the auditorium. Thank you very much.
So Rosa, we're just, we can see your slides. We can't hear you yet.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a big pleasure to be here and also to collaborate with you for 5 minutes. It's really nice to see you all again. Well, I just want to invite you, all of you, to our regional congress, which is in León, Mexico. And I want to also invite everybody on behalf of the Congress Organizing Committee, our IFCC regional federations and national societies, to come to León and to attend the meeting, which is the 25th anniversary, the silver anniversary of the Cola Biocli Congress. Also, the slogan of the meeting is Clinical Laboratory Sciences and Their Importance in the Latin American Health Systems. As you already heard, we have several countries, affiliated member societies of Cola Biocli, that are invited and that will be hopefully here. This is a face-to-face meeting. We also have a satellite symposium a day before we start the Congress, which is the past, present, and future diagnosis of arbovirosis and its impact on public health. This is organized by the University of Guadalajara and the association, the college, Mexican College or Association of Clinical Laboratory Sciences. The Congress program will have 11 pre-Congress courses, and of course, we have the auspices of IFCC, Cola Biocli, and the National Society. By invitation, we will have courses from the Asian Pacific Federation of Clinical Biochemistry and Laboratory Medicine, by the American Association for Clinical Chemistry, the Italian Society of Clinical Biochemistry, the Spanish Society of Clinical Laboratory, and the other pharmacies of Portugal. We have already organized 40 symposia, 11 industry workshops, 4 plenary lectures, and 2 key lectures, 12 roundtable discussions with the experts. And here you have the information, the Congress website as well. The meeting, which is the Polyforum León in León, Guanajuato, Mexico. As you can see here, you have connecting flights from all around the world, actually, and direct flights from several cities in the United States. And we have here the web page that you can open. It's in English and in Spanish. We have already translated the program into English, and it's ready for you to look at. And we are waiting for you in León, Mexico. This is all I wanted to say, and I want to thank the Executive Board and the regional federations for letting me be here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosa, and thank you, Anna, for your presentation. I think, Khosrow, that we have heard from all of the presenters so far, and we're ready to start our open question and answer session. Is that correct? Did I miss anyone yet in the presentations? Good. Well, then let me start with, we've got just a couple of questions so far, but I encourage everyone that's here presenting, as well as everybody that's online listening, to send any questions through the chat box, and we'll do our best to answer them for you. The first question that we had received was really about what is Collabio Oakley, and fortunately through the presentations this morning, I think everybody understands what that group is and what they're doing. Another question that we received came from one of the members of the developing countries, asking if there could be more support, or what support was in place from IFCC to support researchers in the developing countries who do not perhaps have the same resources that other researchers have available. So I'll throw that out there. I don't know if Khosrow or anyone else wants to start answering that question.
Yeah, thank you, David. I was muted. I was going to say that I want to first of all thank everyone for their excellent presentations. And then we had, I think this has helped really clarify a lot of the activities and highlight a lot of the activities that are going on throughout the Americas, North America, Central and South America. So it's a great opportunity to hear from all of you. I want to apologize if this, to some of the audience, like the OSCC audience, were hoping to just attend the first hour, but that our presentations was close to 2 hours. But I think it's still very useful to hear from everyone. This is a unique opportunity. Hope to have this opportunity again next year and every year after that. But in answer to the question regarding researchers in developing countries, I think what my recommendation is to perhaps apply for the VLP, not the VLP, the Scientific Exchange Program. We have a scientific exchange program that allows scientists, especially from developing countries, especially young scientists, to go to another lab in another country for further training. The costs are covered by IFCC, so I would like to encourage you to take advantage of that and apply. You need to first identify a lab that will accept you for a 1 to perhaps 6 month period for scientific exchange, for additional training. And you could apply. The application form is on the IFCC website. You can apply to get to receive funding. Another opportunity is for you to apply for our Roche scholarships. These are to attend conferences. For example, to come to next year's conference in the World Lab Conference in Korea. it will be held end of June. We are actually going to award a number of scholarships, both the Roche Diagnostic as well as IFCC and the Asia Pacific Federation all have scholarships for young scientists to attend that conference. So there is that additional opportunity to attend conferences. We don't have, last point is that we don't have any granting system right now where we can award research grants at this time, but certainly there are other opportunities like scientific exchange and scholarships.
One thing I might add, Khosrow, while it's not in place yet, we are looking in the IFCC at the need from some of the developing countries to provide an ethics review board. We understand that many of the developing countries that might want to institute research projects don't have in place ethics review boards that is very important in terms of conducting appropriate human research and in getting that research published. So we are looking in to see whether that's a potential role for the IFCC as well.
Exactly.
A question that has come up and one that we've seen before is how can individuals participate in IFCC committees? And I guess to add to that is just what is the process and how can individuals get that opportunity?
So IFCC always has positions available because of the large number of committees and task forces and working group. There are always opportunities, but individual scientists cannot, or lab professionals cannot apply for these. You would need to be nominated through your national society. So my suggestion is go to the IFCC website, look at what positions are available, are open, and then contact your national society and ask them to nominate you. Of course, you need to have a background in that area. Let's say if you're interested in serving on the newborn screening task force, if there is a position available, then you would need to have some background in that area. That would increase the chances of you being selected. We always have call for nominations, and therefore there are opportunities always. But one thing though we have, and this is an opportunity, one thing we have noticed is that many times the national societies do not forward these opportunities to their members. So the members are not aware that there are these positions available. So I want to encourage all of you, all of our national societies, both North America and Latin America, to try to forward these, when we have a call for nomination, to let your members know. Because many times we have received questions about this, that they were not aware that there are opportunities available. You can find them on the IFCC website, but it's not that easy. So therefore, best is for national societies to forward these opportunities. So I want to encourage all of the societies, our 95 plus societies around the world to do that. Some do that, but not consistently. And so we always receive questions and concerns about this. There are many opportunities. As we speak, there are many open positions available. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thanks, Khosrow. We don't have a lot of questions. We've had some positive comments about the town hall process, and I can see that we have individuals attending from outside of the federation, outside of Club Oakley and NAFCC, which is very interesting. I think people want to know what's happening in regions outside of their own. I just wanted to mention, though, that these town halls have been conducted so far. This is the fourth, and they have been conducted relative to the specific federations. So everyone will have this same opportunity regardless of where they are in the IFCC world, and we will be doing this on a regular basis. I see that Joe has his hand up. Go ahead, Joe.
Thanks, David. I have a question for Steve Master, and I'm really curious about the feedback, because So at this town hall, we've talked about a number of conferences coming up, the Euromed Lab, the one in León, Mexico, and Seoul. And I was at the AACC meeting, and I have to say, and I'm being really direct and honest, I was a little bit upset that I had to get a COVID test to get in, as well as being fully vaccinated, because there's a logistics to this. And I had a personal commitment. So I made it by 8 minutes, if you can believe it, the 72 hours, 8 minutes. But I felt incredibly safe. And as I said earlier, the AACC did a tremendous job. And this requirement of the COVID test is not yet, at least yet, in the Euromed Lab. So I'm curious, you mentioned that still some members felt a little uncomfortable. What areas did they, and even the food was all eliminated, so you couldn't really have open food. I mean, I think, and there was very well social distancing. So what, I'm curious, what did people still be concerned about?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the reality is part of it was psychological. There had been such concern for so much time, and in fact, people had not been going to meetings for so long. I think it was natural that there was going to be a little bit of concern the first time we were back in person. So I think that was one part of it. I think that that was probably the largest part of it, to be honest. I think that also there was a little bit of concern regionally about the incidence of COVID, and perhaps that area of the country having a slightly higher incidence than perhaps other areas. So that was viewed as a slightly larger risk to go in there. And I think that really played out a little bit more in terms of people going into hotels and having to fly and things like that. With the conference itself, though, I certainly felt, and I think others felt, we were incredibly safe there. I felt like there was no safer place for me than at the conference once we were in there. On the issue of requiring a test, yeah, certainly you could sort of go either way on that. We tried to accommodate people by having on-site testing outside that was free and was PCR testing. And I know that when we had an influx of people all at once, the fact that those tests were being batched in half-hour increments led to a little bit of a line. But by and large, that seemed to go reasonably smoothly. We also had a vendor giving away free antigen tests on the floor of the expo. So we felt that was good. And the rationale there would just be, obviously with the advent of the Delta variant, there was at least a small non-zero risk that someone could come in and still be contagious, even having been vaccinated. And given the fact that Delta was sort of in the ascendancy still at that point, we felt that was the wisest thing to do. I understand that you could go either way, and one could argue that the efficacy of vaccination, assuming that it's up to date, really mitigated a lot of that risk.
Yeah, and you mentioned something that I felt. So the executive board knows that we had an in-person meeting in September in Italy, and I chose not to go. I wanted my first meeting to kind of test the waters, to be an American meeting should something happen. I'm an American, and I know Atlanta is got tremendous infrastructure for medical health. But that's exactly how I felt. I really enjoyed being there. I looked at it as a test case, and I feel very confident now to go to Euromed Lab. So I think it was very well orchestrated.
Thank you both. These are good questions, and in fact, I wasn't able to go to the ACC because of Khosrow and I and others, because of a problem with having been in Italy just recently. So it turned out, having been in that country, you couldn't go down to the U.S., which was unfortunate. But I would say that in traveling to Europe and travel in general, I think many people have been hesitant to travel. First of all, because they perhaps haven't traveled for as long as 2 years. It is a much more bureaucratic process than it ever was before, believe me. In fact, one of the biggest challenges to travel these days is you don't have enough hands to hang on to all the pieces of paper that you need to have when you come up to the border services to try and cross. So you need to do your homework ahead of time. It's not rocket scientists, especially for those of us that work in labs and deal with quality assurance and quality control. So it can be done. It can be done very safely, as others have said. So I certainly encourage everyone on the on the town hall today to start to think about taking advantage of the opportunity to go to meetings in person, such as the Euromed Lab, get an opportunity to get out and interact with your colleagues again. It is a wonderful experience. A question from David Seacombe. It can be argued that harmonization will be a necessary interim step for the standardization of testing and reference intervals. Is there a harmonization strategy that has been developed to address the appropriate steps needed to harmonize testing systems within a country?
Thank you for that question. There is indeed actually a harmonization group that's affiliated with IFCC, and they have been, because of the pandemic, there have been some delays in their activities, but they are actually have a number of groups and activities looking at this question of harmonization of testing systems. And we are also interested, as you know, in harmonization of reference intervals, so the post-analytical harmonization. But analytical harmonization is also a work of this sort of international body that's affiliated with IFCC and previously with AACC. And they actually, Greg Miller and Gary Myers, they are heading that. And they've been very active. More activities are coming. I think they have presentations in early December as part of JCTLM meeting that's organized early December. So more coming in that regard. Certainly there's lots of activities. But in terms of activities at the national level, I think that I'm not aware of any specific country looking at harmonization within their own country in terms of analytical. Now, as you know, in Canada, we're looking at harmonization of reference intervals, for example, post-analytical harmonization. But so there is, I'm sure, activity in certain countries, but IFCC, through this harmonization group, is hoping to achieve some degree of harmonization, in addition to, of course, our activities around standardization. And that's the role of the scientific division. And they continue to work on a number of projects related to a standardization of the specific assays. I noticed Christopher had a question, David.
Yeah, I see his hand was up. Christopher, do you have a comment?
Well, just a comment on the some of the rationale for people, I think, still being reticent to travel. And I think some of it was around the logistics. Stephen definitely covered a number of those. You know, in terms of what would happen if you had a positive test and you're in another country, are you now stuck in a hotel in another country for an extra time? Does that hotel still want you in there? So I think just some of it was fear of the consequence, not so much even the disease, so much as the consequences of a positive test. Particularly, you have a bunch of tests. If it's one of these rapid ones, we've seen a lot of false positives. So it's not to belabor that point, but I know that if people are concerned, that was one of them that I heard that might, if people can address that to satisfaction. I know it varies country to country, maybe even minute to minute, depending on which province or state you're in. But that was one of the ones that I just want to mention.
Hopefully there'll be fewer requests for the testing in general. We're still waiting for Canada, of course, to relax its rule requiring people to be tested when they come back into the country. Stephen Master, your hand is up. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I wanted to actually just follow up on the harmonization question with respect to the reference intervals. You know, we've been very interested in this as well, particularly because one of the challenges, which is also a challenge for any of our data analytics things, is that the way that test results are reported really doesn't go down to the required level of specificity with respect to vendor or test or things like that. You know, LOINC does not do it for us and help us to address that. And so AACC is very interested in that. I'm wondering if IFCC has any interest in that, has thought about that, either as a rec body or through the industry partners, that has thought about those reporting kinds of issues that might help us with some of these issues.
Thanks, Stephen, for that question. Actually, I mentioned that we have formed this task force called the Global Reference Interval Database Task Force. The idea is to create a database, but as part of that, also to look at harmonization of reporting. How do you report and not just reference intervals, but potentially interpretive reports. So there is definitely, we have a lot of interest, and it would be great if we can work together with AACC on this. Form joint, perhaps, groups that can look at the specific questions. The overall goal right now is to create it. We actually have already created a website. This website is just in development, called a reference interval website. The idea is to highlight studies around the world currently that are doing reference interval studies, both adults and children. That actually is already sort of mostly done. It will be published in the near future. The next steps to create a database where we could look at data coming from different regions and establish highlight reference, latest sort of evidence-based reference intervals. Because as you know, there is a huge amount of information out there. A lot of it is based on old data, but there's a lot of new initiatives as well. So the idea is to highlight those initiatives on this new website, but also eventually look at harmonization of reporting, on harmonization of reference intervals. It's something that we are actually trying to do also in Canada, is one area of my own interest. And we have actually achieved some, we have looked at 17 tests in Canada and have analyzed data from different regions of Canada, and are showing that even looking at several different manufacturers, let's say creatinine from multiple vendors, when you look at big data, and we do a lot of big data analytic analysis to look at this, we have found that there are minimal differences and that there is opportunity for harmonization. So there is definitely interest at IFCC in Canada and elsewhere. And so if there are ways to work together, that would be great.
Thanks, Kaja. We do have a few more questions. I see Joe's got his hand up. Go ahead, Joe.
Yes, thanks, David. So let me add a little bit to the discussion that we just had, and I wanted to share with this if you're not aware of this already. I serve on the CLSI Board of Directors as well, and CLSI has just started the revision to EP28, which is on reference ranges, but it's going to be broken down into two separate documents. And this is all on their website. The committees have just started, EP44 and EP45. One is more focused on validation, maybe more for manufacturers. The other one will be more for verification, more for end users. But the key point of this is, and Roche is going to actively participate on both of these, and it really ties into reference intervals, is we want the ability to have guidance and acceptance, regulatory acceptance of using real world evidence, big data, to generate reference intervals. And this would go a long way, I think, to create the harmonization that we just discussed, but maybe also the guidance to kind of standardize this a bit worldwide, because the CLSI guidance documents are recognized. So more to come on this. Unfortunately, they are not going to publish until, I think, the end of 2023, 2024. The committees are just working. But if you're not aware and you're not participating, perhaps you'd want to keep aware of this. And as I said, Roche as a manufacturer, but other companies are participating on these committees, as well as lots of laboratory professionals. We are interested to kind of start a new wave here of looking at reference intervals with all the data we have, as opposed to doing the clinical studies, not as an exclusive way, but in a way to provide some additional possibilities, approaches to add to the traditional way of doing this.
Thanks, Joe. And before I go to Allison, who has her hand up, I just comment that we will share the outcomes from these town hall with the IFCC in general. And I know that Philip Gillery, who's the chair of the scientific division, and that group is very much involved in standardization and harmonization. So I'm sure that they'll be interested in the AACC's involvement and interest in this area as well, Stephen. Allison, you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one more comment. I think that's actually great about the CLSI piece, because I think that's a part that we really need to augment. So I think participation from these other groups here today would be really excellent on there. I also want to note that too, I think the other piece we should look at adding is building that partnership with industry partners for the LIS as well. So not just on our instruments. As we talk about the big data, if we can actually have improved opportunities on what's available to pull out, some of it might not necessarily need to be on our patient reports. So, but having what's actually available on the lab side, so that when we pull the big data, we can actually pull things like the method, the model, all of that right out of those reports to really, really facilitate that big data transfer much more readily, I think would be great.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Allison. A question from a friend of mine, John Anator, asking about, says postdoc opportunities for clinical chemists in developing countries is a big problem, and he's wondering how the IFCC could assist in this.
Postdoc opportunities. Well, I think, again, the scientific exchange program could be helpful there. We don't have a postdoc program per se. That would be difficult to institute, but if a PhD graduate is interested in postdocing in another lab, one best way to do that is through a scientific exchange. But if individuals in any country are looking for opportunities and they do not have they do not know the right people, we'll be happy to help. They can contact the IFCC office or any one of our board members, and we'll be happy to try to put them in touch with some good labs out there who might have opportunities. So again, we can assist. We don't have a postdoc program, but there are many labs who might be interested in taking on some young PhD graduates or MD graduates for further training. That should be possible. And again, some funding can come through the scientific exchange program, but perhaps the individual labs can also have their own funding to provide. So we encourage you to reach out to the IFCC office or any one of us, and we can try to help.
Kazra, I don't know whether we have an official area on our website that talks about these kinds of opportunities, but maybe we could do this in a little more official manner. And as you say, encourage both those groups that might have opportunities as well as those individuals that are looking perhaps for postdoc opportunities, and try and put the two groups together.
Good point. One good way for a young scientist is to contact the chair of, we have a task force on young scientists headed by Santiago, who is based in Argentina. So for example, contacting Santiago would be one way. Another way is contact the office. But I agree, we should look at our website, Sylvia, and see how we can highlight some of the programs to make it easier to find, because we have several programs, but might be buried in the website, different web pages. So we may need to have a way of sort of highlighting those programs for people to find.
Thanks, Khosrow. We have a comment here from Rosa saying that there will be similar requirements for Collabiocle, the Congress in Lyon, specifically a certificate of vaccination, a negative COVID test, and Polyforum Lyon has its own safety rules as well. So that Congress is looking ahead as well to ensure that they can provide a safe environment for individuals going to Mexico for the Congress in 2022. I can just again add as a personal note, this is such a change for everyone. My wife and I went out to dinner last night for the first time, I think, in over a year and a half. And of course, she forgot her purse. Fortunately, I had her COVID certificate on my phone, but then she didn't have ID, and I had to find her copy of her passport that was on my phone. But there's so much work to do before you even get in to get the menu, but it's the new reality, and we all have to start thinking about it. We did end up enjoying our meal and an opportunity to get out. So again, thank you to all of the Congresses that are doing so much work to keep us all safe when we go. And for those that haven't had the opportunity to give it a try yet, I encourage you to start thinking about traveling and getting out to the Congresses. I don't see any other questions at this point in time. Are there any other comments or questions from anybody that's currently on? Oh, there's Anna has her hand up. Go ahead, Anna.
Yes, I only a comment, because some societies have told me that they would like to have a feedback of the surveys that IFCC sends to the countries. I think that it is very interesting to receive a feedback when a survey is sent to the countries. Only that.
It's a good comment, Anna, and I think we try. Sometimes it takes a while to get the surveys all digested and analyzed and get a report, but you're absolutely right, and I think it's important that we do that. If we haven't done so in any specific instance, then we'll need to have a look and make sure that we get back to the respondents and to our members with respect to their responses to the surveys.
Yeah, it's a very good point. We actually have had some general surveys, but we have also some specific surveys recently, let's say on newborn screening or on global lab quality, other programs, even our webinars. So therefore, we should be publishing these, at least in the newsletter, but also perhaps emailing a copy of those, the feedback we have received. So perhaps we'll make a note to remind those specific groups to write a report and circulate that, publish that in our newsletter. As you know, we have a very successful global newsletter, e-news is called, and is actually, it's now usually approximately 40 to 50 pages long, because there is so much news from many parts of the world. So I encourage you, if you don't receive it, I think we have now a email list of over 30,000 people who do receive that newsletter. It's a monthly newsletter, it's published every month. So I think there is one coming out this week, perhaps. Yeah, for November issue is coming out shortly. So if you don't receive it, please just let our IFCC office, just contact IFCC, IFCC at ifcc.org, right? So that's very easy. So I just email IFCC and you'll be put on the email list. But anyways, in that newsletter, we should be publishing the feedbacks from these surveys. I agree. To get more feedback down the road, we need to ensure that we actually inform our membership of the feedback received and how that may have affected or improved our new programs.
Thanks, Khosrow. I see that Stephen Master has his hand up.
Yeah, just a very quick comment, since it sounds like so many of us with meetings are having some of the same issues. This is addressing what Chris McCudden was saying earlier about the possibility of false positive testing going in. I think with the benefit of hindsight, what I would have suggested to my colleagues is, if you're using an antigen test, do it before you leave home, as long as that's within the 72 hours or whatever the requirement is. Our on-site testing was nucleic acid-based testing, which should have had fewer problems with specificity. But just since, again, it sounds like a number of us have upcoming meetings where this is going to be an issue, that's, I would say, one of the lessons learned from our experience.
Yeah, Stephen, just by the way, I was worried about that in getting tested prior to going traveling as well. But it turns out that if, at least in Canada or in Calgary, where I went to be tested, if your antigen test was positive, they automatically refer it for a PCR molecular test. So you need to add that time in. You can't count on just having a result in 15 minutes, because if that was positive, then you got to allow the other 18 to 24 hours to get the PCR test in your hand before you show up at the airport. But they do automatically do that, and I suspect they might do that elsewhere as well. All right. No more questions here unless I'm missing anything, Sylvia or Khosrow. So for my part,
Abdul Razak apparently has a question.
Sure. Please, Abdul Razak.
Thank you. As member of Arab Federation, after this meeting and this discussion, I think we have the same preoccupation as our colleague from Colombia, and we hope future great collaboration between IFCC, Colombia, and IFCC for the development of biology in Arab country and African country. It's very, very important, the collaboration between IFCC and other countries for another federation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Abdul Razak.
I wanted to add to that we have actually encouraged collaboration between different federations. So, for example, Alexander actually is organizing a conference next year. It's a joint meeting of the European Federation and the Arab Federation. It will be also IFCC's participating, of course. It will be next year. So there might be opportunities, for example, for the North American Federation to have joint meetings with the Kolabiokli or with another federation. So IFCC would like to encourage as many of these collaborations and joint events as possible.
Indeed, I think that is one of the major goals and responsibilities of IFCC. Our own individual societies throughout the world, whether it's AACC or CSCC or others, do a tremendous job of providing education, resources, and support locally or nationally. But I think one of the major roles for IFCC and one of its advantages being international is to provide opportunities for the groups to work together globally and to assist those groups that are in need in some part of the world by resources available in another part of the world. I think no more questions at this end. Khosrow, are we ready to wrap up?
I think so. If there are no other questions, I want to just thank everyone for participating, both our panelists who are on Zoom with us here, but also I mentioned hundreds of members are actually listening to us in the background. There is a special website that this is being broadcast by the IFCC office. And so we have a large number of participants, and I want to thank all of them as well for joining us. I want to let you know, if you missed part of this, all of this is recorded and actually will be available shortly on the IFCC website. So a recording of the entire town hall. We also have recordings of the European, Arab, and African town hall. We have a recording of the Asia Pacific town hall available already, and a recording of the town hall with our corporate members also on the website. So all of these will be available for those who missed it, who could listen to all or part of it in the future. So I really just want to say that this was an opportunity to bring people together. That's really the role of IFCC. IFCC is an umbrella organization. It's to bring people together from everywhere. And I'm happy that it has been successful. We have received excellent feedback from all of the town halls we have had, including corporate members who are very happy with this type of initiative. So let's hope we can continue this next year and have an annual town hall with all of you, but you don't have to wait until next year. If there are issues, concerns, questions, please raise them, email the IFCC office or email any one of us. Especially email your regional federation representative. In this case, Stephen, as well as Anna Leno can take your questions and find the right people to answer them if you have concerns, questions, or suggestions. The last thing I wanted to also encourage our North American Federation and the Kolabiokli to consider perhaps hosting a World Lab in the future. We have a World Lab now going to be every 2 years. So the next opportunity, this coming year is is being hosted by the Asia Pacific Federation. It will be in Korea, Seoul. Try to join us end of June 2022. The next opportunity is 2024, and then every 2 years after that. So please consider hosting one of these World Lab conferences, another opportunity to bring everyone together. Anyways, thank you all. I want to thank the IFCC office, everyone in the office, particularly Paola and Sylvia Colilanzi for helping to organize this event. And thank you, David, for moderating.
You're very welcome. Thank you for your comments and to everyone for participating.
Thank you all.
Bye.
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 Bye.